Welcome to the Women's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Women's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned?
In this ever-evolving world, we need different skill sets. Do you know how to get ahead? Well, with me is Roxana Hewertson, and we're going to hear what we need to do. And I would like to welcome Roxy. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Barrie. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about your background, because as we were discussing, you've got an eclectic background, and tell us how you got into what you're going to be doing.
Well, I began in my career as a leader almost from the start. When I was 22 years old, all of a sudden I was the assistant director of a record store. It just happened, and I found that I really enjoyed leading and working with people and helping them be successful, and I continue to do that with my career as an entrepreneur, my career at Cornell University, and even in teaching, and now in my consulting career.
Now, what do you think are some of the skill sets a woman needs to excel in today's environment?
Women who want to be leaders need to consider how it is that they are performing in the workplace just the same as men who want to be leaders. But there are differences. And the differences are really focused on women being themselves, being authentic. It worries me when women try to be like men or hide the strengths that they bring to the table. The perspectives women have are really value added in the workplace today, incredibly important, and need to be heard. So women need to have their voices heard a lot more than they are today.
What is the best way for women's voices to get heard then?
Women need to understand the environment they're working in and really get a good sense of the culture. As any leader needs to do, they need to understand themselves, what is important to them, what their priorities are, how they impact other people, how they're being perceived by other people, and deal with their strengths and their challenges, areas of development forthrightly, and not blame other people or pretend they're not there.
All right, well, let's just step back a second.
Okay.
You go to a networking situation,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a room full of people, men and women.
Mm-hmm.
How do you zero in on, let's say, a leader in the group?
How would you tell the difference?
Yes.
I can always tell when someone is likely to be a leader or has leadership qualities when they're really listening to the other person, when they're paying attention, when they're inquiring about what's going on with that person, when they pay attention to the topic, and when they are authentic. And you can see it in their body language, you can see it in the way they're chatting with people.
Let's go to the body language. What are some of the characteristics that they would have?
Someone who's really paying attention?
Yes.
Someone who's really paying attention in our culture makes good eye contact, responds, has some clear indication for the person who's talking that they want to know more, that they care about what the person is saying. They'll perhaps ask questions and probe. They may paraphrase. These are just good listening skills. A lot of them we've learned in various different courses here and there, but people don't apply them nearly as much as they should.
All right, so when you go to a networking function, it could even be an office meeting that you're newly hired, so you don't know who's in the room and who's the players. So you're looking for somebody who can really that listens to other people versus constantly talking and talking because they like to talk to hear themselves talk.
Yes. It's not just the listening, but the listening is really important. It's the way the person is interacting with other people. So pay attention to how authentic that person feels to you and trust your instincts. Because we know when people are genuine and when they're not. And people have a tendency to put masks on and to play roles that really do them a disservice. Authenticity is far, far more important than trying to impress or create an image.
Do women put on airs or do men put on more airs?
I think everyone does. I think everyone does. And everyone who is not feeling really self-assured and confident, I don't mean arrogant, I mean confident in who they are, feeling grounded in who they are, feeling that they belong in the room.
In your coaching business, what do you find the biggest detriment to women?
Trying to be like men as leaders.
Okay.
Or not being able to find their voice. Both of those they're opposite ends of the spectrum, actually. So when they don't find their voice, they're not being heard, and their ideas and their perspectives that are so valuable are not being heard for whatever reason, whether they're not confident or they're working for someone who really discounts them, whatever the reason is. The other end of it is really this issue of trying to be somebody they're not. And once again, we're back to authenticity. When people aren't genuine in who they are, the people around them know it. And that's not going to ever work in your favor. It doesn't. Sooner or later, it will come back to bite you.
How can you overcome it?
If you're not feeling confident, learn what you need to learn. If you're not feeling that you have the skill sets, get the skill sets. If you don't know the rules of the game, learn the rules of the game. And one of the best ways to do that is to find a good mentor. Really find a good mentor. Somebody whom you admire, who leads well, who would be willing to help you navigate this path for yourself.
What is a good way for a woman to find a mentor?
It's really important to find someone you trust, number one, and someone who exemplifies the kind of leader you would like to be. So look for someone. It's usually someone more experienced, someone who's been there, done that, and is willing to share some of their time to help you.
Well, if you find a mentor, what rules of the road should you be aware of when you have a mentor?
You need to be very candid. You need to create that trusting relationship, and explore the things that are maybe tough to explore, the areas where you feel less strong, and the areas where you feel challenged and maybe a little scared, and look at those areas to see how you can grow, see how you can develop.
If you're having a woman as a mentor, do you find that having a woman as a mentor, is that beneficial or a detriment to you?
Depends on the woman. What's happened in my generation is that women oftentimes were their own worst enemies, and that's changing. I'm happy to say that's changing. I see a lot more support of women for women and other women. So there's a new passion around women helping women that wasn't there when I was coming up through the ranks. It was the opposite of that. And so my mentors were mostly men. I now mentor women, and I would like to see more of that happening.
As a mentor, do you give them assignments to do to help them grow in their position?
Absolutely.
What kind of assignments, for an example?
An example would be if they haven't ever done, say, a 360-degree feedback exercise, then I recommend that they find a way to do that.
What is a 360 exercise?
That's when you find out, there are lots of ways to get different formats. Sometimes companies have them within their own organizations. There are just lots of acts. There's lots of. So you Google 360 and you'll find lots of methodologies. What it is we ask a lot of questions about your leadership style, your leadership acumen, your behaviors, and I use one that measures emotional intelligence, and how that's coming across as a leader in terms of the way, why it's called a 360 is it goes out to peers, goes out to your boss, goes out to maybe customers. You also answer it, and then it comes full circle back to you. That's why it's called a 360. That data.
Interesting.
And it's always anonymous and confidential. So the goal is to give you information about how you're perceived by others and how you're impacting others, so you can make the right decisions and find out where your strengths are and find out what's maybe not working so well for you. So that would be one example. I really strongly recommend that to anyone I coach. It's hard to coach somebody if I'm not understanding how they're perceived, and there's no way that you know all the answers to that by yourself.
What are some of the other things that you have them do as an exercise? I mean, that sounds fantastic.
I have them think about what their passions are. I walk them through visioning exercises. I make sure that they understand what their personal and their professional goals are, as well as their personal values, because we make our decisions based on our values and our beliefs. All of them. All of them. And sometimes women and men have a lot of difficulty narrowing down what is really driving their decisions. And once they understand that, then they can figure out how they want to make their choices around those things. Because our values and our beliefs do drive our decisions, there's no question.
Well, I would venture to say that our values and our beliefs were programmed when we were little kids. So changing all that as we grow up, I'm just wondering, does it change when you move to a different city, or your circumstances change, or is it you still bring your core? It's kind of like you can take the person out of Brooklyn, but you can't take Brooklyn out of the person.
Right. I believe your personality is going to stay the same. You're going to explore different facets of it, though, as you mature. You're going to explore different facets as you learn from other people and as you learn from your experience. And in terms of their values, the core values, I agree with you. Your core values are your core values, but I think we've all seen ourselves as we grow questioning some of those. I mean, what might have been a number one value when you're 12 years old might be a number 5 value today. Our hierarchy of values changes, and sometimes our basic values change. So, for instance, somebody might have been brought up in a family of hunters, right? And decides to become a vegetarian when they're in their 20s and never hunts again and never eats meat again. That could happen. I mean, that we change our values and what's important to us as we mature, as we experience, and as we make new choices when we become adults and when we go through different stages of life. I wouldn't say our values never change. I think who we are stays basically the same, and how we choose to grow ourselves and how we choose to develop ourselves really makes a lot of difference, and those choices make a lot of difference.
Since this world is so small these days, do you find there is crossover in values in somebody who's been brought up in, let's say, the United States and lived in Europe, someplace else? Do you find that they have difficulty meshing back into the United States and our way of living and our values? I don't know if that's the right thing. Values and living.
You're talking about culture more than values, I think.
Okay.
Although different cultures have different values, there's no question. My husband's Scottish, so and my father was Iranian. So I come with a sort of an eclectic family background, and what I really believe, Barrie, I really believe that basic human values are the same the world around. That doesn't mean they're identical, because in one society something may be much more important than in another society. In terms of, say, Japan, for instance, politeness is way more important there than it is in the United States. So those are, there are cultural values and there are family values that do shift from culture to culture, from different parts of the United States to other parts. I mean, it's not the same to be a New Yorker as it is to be a Dallas resident or a San Francisco resident.
How does that translate into doing business?
Oh, that's a great question. sensitivity that a leader needs to have around the people and the place and the culture within the organization is paramount. Lots of people make this mistake. In fact, I've seen college presidents make this mistake many times, and it happens across the country, within businesses, in government, in business, in every walk of life. Where, say, a new leader comes in to a new organization, and he or she just decides that their agenda is the right agenda, their vision's the right vision, and the way they want to do things is the way it's going to be done, discounting entirely the people who are already there, what's gone before, the culture of the organization, and the values. This is why most mergers and acquisitions fail. I mean, most in this country fail, abysmally fail. Why? Because the leadership chooses to ignore that you have two different cultures you're trying to put together with two different value systems. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
What's the solution?
The solution is, first of all, don't acquire and merge companies where you can't mesh their value systems, or respect the separate cultures, the separate value systems, and you can own them both, but that doesn't mean you have to glue them together. Things that don't want to be glued together don't stay glued together. Believe me, they don't.
You've been in a job for a while. How do you know when it's time to move on? Like you're at a plateau. You love the company, you want to stay at the company, you've got all your, another year, and you're going to be vested and so forth. How do you know when it's really time to move on?
I believe it's time to think about what choices you want to make around your job. If you get up in the morning and you don't want to go to work, what's going on there? Is it the boss? Is it the team? Is it that you're feeling stagnant? Is it that you haven't learned anything new? Is it that you feel undervalued? What's happening? And you need to really think about, is this the right fit for you? And if it isn't, what is the right fit? And what are you passionate about? And what would make you happy? What feels right to you? I think people discount their instincts a lot and often stay in a job longer than they should when they know that they're not happy in it. And when they're not happy, they're never going to do their best anyway, and they're not going to shine. So it's important to be in a work environment and culture and a job that if you have the choice, if you can move, if you can shift jobs even within an organization, do whatever you can to learn what you need to learn, to be doing things that bring you joy. Life is too short. It's not worth it.
Does it help for a woman to do a lot of volunteer work to advance her career?
Like what?
I don't know. I was just thinking, with what's going on here in the city of New York, right now there's so many people volunteering, and I'll be volunteering on a couple projects just this week, but I don't see how they would benefit me career-wise, but I'm doing it anyway. I mean, is there certain things you should be looking for if you're going to do volunteer work?
Let me tell you about volunteer work. I think it's really important for a lot of reasons, for men and for women. I don't know so much about whether it's going to impact a person as a leader, depending on the volunteer work. I mean, you could have a leadership role as a volunteer. There's no question about that. Why I think it's important, there are two really big reasons. One is that when you give back, it actually changes your body chemistry.
Oh, really?
In a very positive way. It makes you a better person. It makes you more joyful, and you bring that into the rest of your life. So that's one. The second reason why volunteering is really valuable in terms of career is because you'll get some skill sets out there doing things that you weren't normally doing. Say you went to work for Habitat for Humanity and help build a house. Well, if you've never done that before, but you're pounding nails and watching people do whatever they're doing and watching them put up plumbing, well, you're going to get some skill sets, and you know what else you're going to get? Some confidence. You're going to get some confidence in doing something that you haven't done before. So you've taken a risk, you've gone an extra mile, and you've gotten joyful and rewarded at the same time. There is no downside to volunteering, as far as I'm concerned.
What are some hot fields for women to really concentrate going into today?
I would say take a look at the market and find out where the openings are and find the ones that are useful, that are interesting to you. So the clearly IT is an area that women are growing in. Engineering is an area that women are growing in. Doctoring, lawyering, teaching, healthcare. One of the biggest sectors in the market today is senior living, without a doubt. As administrators as well as care providers, there are tremendous population of women in the senior living industry. Sometimes they pay well, sometimes they don't. It depends on what the job is. I think my advice, though, wouldn't be so much to look for what are the hot growing areas in the marketplace, but to plug into where your own interests and passions are and get as much education and learning as you can and experience in that area and develop yourself to become very strong in that area that you love. So whatever it is.
It almost sounds as if you identified an area that's so far out from what you're programmed to be and have done, it almost sounds like you are best to really volunteer to get the experience so people can say, oh, why don't you come work here?
I have done that.
Okay.
I have done that. I actually have volunteered to do things where I wanted to learn the skill set. I remember in my early days that I didn't quite volunteer in this case. It felt like it because I was getting paid so little. I wanted to learn how to run a business. So I was in the record retailing business and learning really right at the ground level. That wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. But oh my gosh, I wouldn't give it up for anything because it was like I got a business degree in 2 years on the front lines, somebody else paying for it. And the result is that I kept getting promoted and promoted and promoted because I did it really well and I learned everything I could learn. So whenever you have an opportunity to learn something, go for it. The learning is key. Educate, educate, educate.
What makes a woman stand out as a leader?
Authenticity, integrity, good instincts, paying attention, being able to balance objective with humanistic decision making so that we're making good decisions based on the facts and the logic and the rationale, as well as good decisions that impact people. So balancing those decisions, women lean towards that more than men to some degree. I'm not going to say all women are like that because there aren't. I've met women who haven't got any empathy or compassion. I've met men who have lots of empathy and compassion. On balance, though, women tend to be paying attention to the people side of things because collaborative workplaces are the most successful. Collaborative workplaces are the places that have the best results. Business results, operating results, whatever. Women can bring that voice to the table in ways that I think haven't been heard enough and need to be honored. And I think we're moving in that direction. And in fact, I know we're moving in that direction. I see it more and more where that voice is heard. But women have to be willing to make sure their voice is heard and not just wait for somebody to ask them.
Because I know you go to a meeting and you'll say something and you get ignored. Mm-hmm. And a man could say the same thing and it's the greatest thing.
I know.
How do you deal with something like that?
Well, that's a great question, too. It may be that the culture in that organization is not suited for women to have a voice or women to be empowered. That's something someone would have to really look at. First, though, I'd look at yourself and see how is it that you're saying what you're saying. Are you saying it with conviction, with confidence? Are you saying it at the right and appropriate time? Are you saying it to the right people at the right time? Did the other person, just because he was a man, was he heard, or was it that he said what he said at the right time to the right people in the right way? So first look at yourself and make sure. Again, look at people who are effective around you. See what they're doing. See what they're doing. Pay attention to what they're doing, and if that feels right to you, then utilize those talents that you have in new ways. Pay attention to how you can be more effective. I think it's important for women not to feel like victims in the workplace. And the way you feel more like a victor instead of a victim is to take charge of your own career, take charge of your voice, take charge of your destiny, and not wait for someone else to give you that opening. And I don't mean be aggressive. I do mean be smart. I mean be smart about how you utilize your voice and where you do it and how you do it, and do it with integrity, do it with honesty, be assertive without being aggressive, and sooner or later your good work is going to show up. I do believe women have to work harder than men to be heard. Well, I do believe that.
Well, we are underpaid for the same job.
Absolutely. Underpaid and underrecognized and undervalued. It's getting better. It's not good enough. And it's going to take a lot of women paying attention to their voice and making sure their voices are heard. The other thing is that women need the skill sets to be leaders. And if they're not getting the skill sets at work, they need to get it themselves. They need to find ways to get leadership skill sets to be a leader. They need to learn how to communicate in ways that they can be heard. They need to learn how to write in ways that their writing will be valued. They need to conduct meetings well. They need to lead their teams well. If they don't have those skill sets, it's not going to be helpful to them. They're not going to rise in the way and as fast as they'd like. And there's no reason for them not to. Women have as much brain power and a lot to bring to the table as anyone else.
In the closing moments of the show, what would you like to leave the audience with?
I would like women to have their voices heard. And the way to do that is to be authentic. Trust your instincts. Educate yourself. Keep learning. Never give up. And continue to believe in yourself with whatever it takes to become confident. Because confident women are strong women, and we need strong women in our world, and we need strong women leaders desperately.
Roxy, thank you so much for joining me. It's been really great.
I've enjoyed it.
And are you learning to lead yourself to higher plateaus? Look forward to hearing from you. Please write us here at the Women's Connection. Bye now.